Hey, Will. Hope everything's going okay for you. Hope you're having a good start to your day. I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible. Try and keep it under 15 minutes if I can. One of the major bullet points to this project, which I'm calling the Connectivity Project, one of the major bullet points is to boil things down, break them down into steps, and make them very simple as simple as possible, making it a step-by-step process that we can do one at a time. First few steps, sort of on a trial basis, as opposed to doing full cannonball into everything, and breaking things down to that step-by-step process, so that we're not trying to do everything at once, because this is a much larger project than than the digital signage, and I think than we were expecting. But it is a much larger project. Have to talk to a lot more people. Have to do a lot more planning. We're talking about four angles, basically 4 or 5 different types of technology or sections of this project, whereas with the digital signage one, it was just digital signage. And we were essentially just working with one company and talking to multiple people within that company. So where I talked to about 10 people to get that project done, all of probably throughout the course of everything, all have talked to probably between 20 or 30 people to get this done. So this is a much larger project, and it's very convoluted. So, but good news, I do have things pulled back very simply. You can see here the notes are very straightforward. So we're going to get into these, and I've got a few tabs in my browser to show you. And we're going to talk about things, and basically what I'm going to do is kind of give you an overview, a rundown of how this project's going to go. Because this could be something that could be easy to mess up, but we're not going to do it that way. So as long as we take things step by step, then we'll be golden. So, called the Connectivity Project. One of the first things that I'm going to want to do is purchase the computer and the peripherals. So the peripherals are all the other items like a mouse, a keyboard, the monitor, and things of that nature. But I won't make that purchase until I purchase the hotspot, which is what's going to give us the internet, the connectivity. So everything depends on, we're essentially talking about cord cutting. And everything depends on whether or not we can get reliable, sustainable internet connection via a hotspot. Otherwise, it's going back to plan A, which is more of a plan B, but it's the restructuring of our current deal with TDS. We've exhausted all other options, tried to talk to a bunch of people to figure out if we could get anything done. We don't really have anything coming our way. We're hopeful for the next 6 to 12 months. We're hoping that some new channels will open up. But even then, let's say we have Comcast open up. I've looked at so many prices now, but a dedicated business line is, I don't know if I should call it overpriced or just say that it's just very needlessly priced. There's all kinds of rumors and things that people say about this stuff, and a T1 line, and I don't know how I feel about it all. People who say you're paying for the reliability. You need to have that dedicated service, that dedicated internet, and that dedicated phone. And it's like, we've been paying an arm and a leg for that reliability for years now, and we're not, you know what I mean? We haven't gotten any I mean, it doesn't seem reliable or sustainable whatsoever. It's definitely not sustainable because the phone hardware is going out. And, I wouldn't exactly call... I was told that with the T1, what you pay for is what you're going to get. And we've been getting almost half. We've been paying for 6 megabits per second. And we've been getting 4 for, who knows how long, years. And so I wouldn't call that reliable. And then the other thing is, Mel is very, very involved. So she has a lot of thoughts and feelings about these different things. Line 2 going down. And, weird stuff going on with the phones. And security for the entire building. She's told me that there's been nights where there's been no security. Or we can't process payments. You know what I mean? I can't fathom a less reliable service. And I haven't been around for the years that you guys have had to deal with this, but to me it just sounds unreliable. So I don't know why we're paying an arm and a leg for what's been quoted to us to be reliable, but I just feel like we're getting screwed, and I don't like it. So so these are creative solutions that we're talking about. We're definitely kind of thinking out of the box on this, and it is a convoluted, complex project. So this is definitely it's a tough one, but I've got it boiled down. So it's not, don't worry about any of this. We can do things on a trial basis. We can check them out, find out if it works good for us, if, we can get somewhere with this, trying these creative solutions. And the solutions themselves we're talking about rolling back on costs. It doesn't cost us very much to try these things. So basically we're going to take things step by step on a trial basis. And each thing builds off of the hotspot. So the computer, I will put together a full PO purchase order for what I want exactly when we go in to buy the hotspot. The most important thing, we're going to have the computer regardless. Whether we go with the restructuring TDS plan or we go with our creative solutions here, we're still going to get that computer. So that will be the same. The hotspot, we have a lot of options. And the market's kind of weird. The market's kind of funny. So you're unthrottled, no contract, unlocked devices, and I should have put in unmetered solutions. Those are going to come from independent resellers of like Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. The majority of the business in the market are resellers. And that's because your main cellular network companies, they're kind of pricing out the consumer a little bit. They go with a metered bandwidth, and they charge a lot for it. So it's one of those. It's kind of like a trap where you buy this thing for internet connectivity, and you're basically only limited to like travel use because you've got so many gigabytes that you're limited to every month. Well, for us as a small business, that's not going to work. That's just not something that I would trust to put my money on. So what we need is unmetered. And the only way that I've ever seen, there's a lot of research and development in this, but the only unmetered mainstream hotspot plans are prepaid plans. So you would have to go through Verizon's prepaid department, potentially. I've just read this. You would have to go through their prepaid department and talk to somebody, or you would have to, most all of the mainstream hotspot plans, they're metered. So you'll only have 40, 50, 60 gigabytes of data that you can work with per month. So we don't want a metered connection. So most of our solutions that we're going to be looking at are small independent businesses that are reselling. So they're reselling the service. So yeah, so those are the people that we're going to be working with. They're smaller businesses. We can still look at, Verizon's prepaid and different things like that. There isn't any reason to discount anyone's service whatsoever as long as we're connecting to major cellular tower networks. We have a lot of options. Is my bottom line. The point that I'm trying to get to is that we have a lot of options, and I'm going to show one today. So, what unlocked means is if we purchase a hotspot device and it's unlocked, we'll be able to try out different networks. Now, ideally, this is what I would like. I would like our device to be unlocked so that we could, just have that extra flexibility. But some devices are unlocked, some are not. We have so many choices of people to go with, prepaid sellers, resellers. There are a lot of options. Some of them are going to be unlocked, some of them are not. None of them are going to be throttled. So another thing, throttling is, okay, so someone tells you you have unlimited data, but then when you cross a certain threshold, say 50 gigabytes of data in a month, then what they do is they actually throttle your connection and make it much slower. And that's what a lot of companies do for either, cell phones, whatever's connecting to their cellular towers. So what we're going for is something that is flexible, no contract, and has a guarantee. So like a money-back guarantee, a 14-day trial, something where we can dip our toes in the water and kind of figure out if this is for us. We can get it in the building and we can turn it on and see how much speed we're actually getting. And then at that point, we could decide if we want to hang on to it and, see how it works on a small scale build with the one connected to it at all times, one VoIP phone connected to it at all times, start to dabble in getting security connected to it and things like that. So this is a very one at a time process, and everything has to be strategically planned out, not only incrementally, but we have to look at costs and whether or not we can try things without being locked into any kind of contract or, without fear of any major pitfalls. So, moving on, like I said, I want to keep this short. VoIP, we're going to look at the average cost, and we're going to talk about a trial period. Some companies have like a 14-day trial period, things like that. VoIP is very easy. It's very laid back, very cheap. Something you can just get into and try. These are all rather cheap, rather simple things. It's just a lot of them tied into together. So don't worry about it whatsoever. So this is sort of step one. Settling on a hotspot, settling on a VoIP company, and one thing is number portability. So can we keep our same number? Some companies you can, some companies you can't. I mean, most companies you can, but you have to look up the individual number. And if it's got a lock on it from their side or whatever, then you would have to change the number. So ignore the computer because that's simple. We just pull together the specs of the computer. I can give you the rundown of, why what is important, why we're choosing what we're choosing, and then we just purchase it and get it in the building. We don't have to worry about whether it's a trial option or it's something we just want to dabble in or check it out, or it's not a creative solution. It's one out of the 6 computers that we're getting. So that's, you can chalk that up as an afterthought. The main focus right now is the hotspot and VoIP. So this is very simple. We're breaking it down into, number 2 and number 3. And then when we get number 2 and number 3 in the door and done, then we can focus on 4, and then we can focus on 5. So that's how we're going to break things down to keep it simple. So we're going to get a hotspot. We're going to get it in the building. We're going to check the speeds on it and what kind of connection we're getting. And then we're going to get a VoIP phone, and we're going to get it connected to the device and see how things are going. And at the same time, we'll be buying the first computer and getting it in the building and set up as well. But that's sort of, that bleeds into another project, as you're aware. So it's basically just getting this device, getting it in the building, checking our speeds, and then getting one of these cheap phones in the building and connecting it to the device and seeing if things are going well. And if things are going well, then we can scale. We can buy the rest of the phones that we need, and we can start to look at security. Security is going to be easy as well, but I do have to make contact with the representative just because of the notations and everything, the way they word things. It's difficult to know exactly, what device is our option. So we're talking about just a Wi-Fi central hub, since all of the cameras are hardwired internally or what have you. They're not connected to Wi-Fi. They're not accessed or anything like that. So we're just talking about the one security hub. So we just have to call up the rep and say, hey, look, we're trying to cut the cord and we need something that works off of Wi-Fi. What do you got for us? And we can get that taken care of. So that's simple as well. And then the last thing, I'm just going to touch on it. We're not even going to have this conversation until down the line, until we get to bullet point 5. This is something that I know some about, and I definitely think it's at least just looking at our options and some of the ideas that we have. Believe me, I understand, the difference between a payment facilitator, payment processor, merchant services. I understand how the bank works with internal merchant services, as well as, how they license out or partnerships or whatever with merchant services. I understand costs, and my major fixation is hardware. So we're looking to make these digital transitions, right? Well, our payment processing, if we have nice processing and it ends up being cheaper for us, then that would be the way to go. If we're getting better hardware with more features, more accessibility, more bells and whistles, and it's cheaper, then that's the name of the game. That's the name of the game for this entire project. Cutting costs and getting more bells and whistles. So let's start taking a look at some of these tabs, and then I'm going to wrap up. Let me check my time. I'm already at 20 minutes. Okay, I apologize. I try to make it for 15 minutes. It's really difficult. So here I've got the tabs open that we're going to take a look at. The company that I'd like to try, the devices that they provide, I don't believe that they're unlocked. They could have unlocked solutions. They could send it to us unlocked. It's probably just a simple thing that they do. I know it has to do with the SIM card. They could send an unlocked SIM card. But they work with two they're resellers of two services, T-Mobile here on the pink plans, and then Sprint on the yellow plans. And I believe Sprint uses Verizon's towers. So in the end, I don't think that we can make a mistake going with any certain provider, whether it's T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, because I think that we're in a really good spot for cellular connection. Just kind of a hunch that I have. And so we really just have to pick a device and a company to go through. There are other companies you can go through and you can get an unlocked device and then, take chances on different plans, whether you want to try the Verizon prepaid or whatever it is. I like this company and how they seem very confident in coverage. They link out, they've got their own coverage map, which shows the T-Mobile map. That's over here, you can access it. Coverage, so this is wireless buy. Coverage, this is their map, and this is the same map as the T-Mobile map. You can see here the legend, the dark green. We're right here in the dark green. So that is very good. I could pull it up. What this does is this actually links out. This links out to T-Mobile's coverage map, which shows the same. And this one goes out to Sprint's coverage map. And they show that we're in an excellent position for excellent service as well. So I don't think we can make a mistake there. I think that it literally boils down to purchasing one of these devices, which is about $200, and then getting it in the building and trying it out. And the month-to-month plans, most all of them are no contract. The monthly cost is about $70. So we're talking very cheap. And this is what this essentially is. This is your modem and router. So your modem is what provides the internet, and then your router is what makes it accessible wirelessly. And these are modems and routers in one. So a rose by any other name. I don't know if I used that correctly, but whether it's a T1, it's a shared Comcast plan, fiber optic, 5G, you know what I mean, cell towers, 4G, LTE, it's all the same thing. We're talking about internet, you know what I mean? Whether you drill a well or you connect to the city, it's still water. And you're still guaranteed a certain, whatever measurement they give you for water, you get so much out of. So basically, this is as simple as getting a device, getting it in the building, and testing it out. And understanding that we can return it if it doesn't work for us. So it's that simple. And when I send over which one I want to get into the building, I will also send over the PO, purchase order, for the computer and the peripherals. Once we get that in the building and we try that hotspot, then I will submit a PO for our VoIP, who we're going to do VoIP with, and the costs, which VoIP is probably the cheapest on everything that we're going to talk about. This is running a little long, but it's going well. I'm taking a very complicated, convoluted thing and boiling it down into a simple step-by-step process, which has, trial periods, money-back guarantees, low costs. So here's the device that I like. We have several device choices through this company, and there are a lot of other companies we could choose from, so we're definitely not limited on any options whatsoever. This is the one that I like, the Nighthawk. I've seen it all over the web. I know that Nighthawk is one of the first people to make 5G Hotspots. So I think, it's Netgear, which is, they're like the number one name in modems, routers, dongles, cards, and then, the mobile router here. Business connectivity, they talk about business on different pages of their website here. So it's as simple as purchasing it, getting into the building, testing it out. If it doesn't work, send it back. Then we're talking about VoIP. There are a lot of providers for this as well. The company that I talked to is RingCentral. Our number is unfortunately not portable over there, but costs are pretty much the same across the board. We've got a lot of options. These are all name brands that I've known and seen. I remember when Vonage came out and they were playing commercials all over the TV for a long time. So we've got a bunch of options. This page, this tab here is meant to show that we have a lot of options. But the prices are pretty much all the same, and it's all business class stuff. I mean, this is like office supplies. It's cheap. Right here we're looking at business plans for Vonage. 2 to 4 lines. You're talking $30-$40. Have a line up front, a line at your desk. Could have a line over across the room, or we can have 2 lines up front. We could do 5 to 19 lines. I don't know what the price change is. Looks like the price went down if you go to 5 to 19 lines. So this is very cheap. The price did go down. I don't know why it went down if you're going through 5 to 19 lines. Per month, per line. Okay, so it's per line. Okay, that might be specific to Vonage. It could be per line for everybody. I don't know. Let's see. So that would be for 4 lines. This would be. I looked at some of the features. Unlimited calling and SMS, mobile app, desktop app, Vonage Flow, multi-level auto assistant. That could be something that we might care about. And again, this is just Vonage. We have a lot of options and choices. Video conferencing, chat, and file support. See, we're not going to use any of this stuff. Call group, maybe. When you're talking about VoIP, you're talking about so many features that you can't even keep track of them all. Whoever we go through, we're not going to use all of their features. No way. So, if we're talking 5 lines, we might only need this one down here. Mobile, I don't know why they give it that name. It probably just to discourage people from getting it or whatever. You're talking $18 per line per month. So that's 5, that's like 50. So we're talking like another $70. Which is cheap. And so this comes down to just selection. Who are we going to test? Who are we going to try? And we'll know who that is before we purchase the hotspot. So we're going to know who we're going to go with VoIP and what the price is going to be before we make a move on the hotspot and get it in the building. We're going to get the phone in the building at the same time as the hotspot in the computer. So this is all one thing. Getting it in the building, checking it out, and seeing if it works for us. This is so that we don't have to jump into anything. After that comes security. So we're wrapping up here. After that comes security, and basically we just have to talk to the rep and say, hey, what central hub can we get that works off of Wi-Fi? And you already know that they have those, so it's just a matter of calling them up and saying, hey, what do we got? Can we get it in the building? So you can see how all of these things have been broken down into very simple incremental things that we'll do. And then last is payment processing. So Fat Merchant, they work with the big boys. So they process in volume. They work with a lot of large companies, I think. When I first read about them, it was some kind of review or something, and it just kind of gave a hint as to, what type of volume this would be best for. I don't think that we would face any limitations. I think if we called them up to look at our options, we would be fine. But right now, going through PNC and their merchant services, we're paying about 1.8% of gross. That's of gross revenue. So it's about 2% of gross revenue. Whereas on sort of your more retail end perspective, you're going to be talking about a PayFac. That's a payment facilitator. So like PayPal, Stripe, Square. Those companies are going to charge about 2.9%. And sometimes there's even a tax that goes along with that, like a 5 cent per transaction tax. I couldn't pull up the pricing page. I'm having a little trouble pulling up the pricing page. Here's Fat Merchants, their website. I think something to do with my browser or something like that is difficult to connect to the pricing. But if I remember it correctly, the pricing is 0%. So you don't pay a percentage on a transaction. You only pay a tax. And I think the tax is like 7 cents. So if we're talking about, our average purchase might be, our MVP, minimum viable product, or whatever, our go-to product that we sell, our go-to checkout price, might be $100. If that's the case, $100, then the 7 cent per transaction tax, we're just looking at 0.07%. So we're talking about going from 1.8% of gross revenue down to 0.07% of gross revenue that we have to pay out of our pockets just in order to be able to process payments. Now, Fat Merchant, and there are a lot of options here as well. This is why I've taken us down this path of entertaining these creative options, because I knew how competitive these markets were. VoIP, the internet space, payment processing, and security. I know that there's a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of changes coming up. So I knew that there were going to be options. And we're not going to talk about it now, but down the road, when everything else is taken care of, we can take a look at this and see if this might be something worth our time to look at. Because we're talking about going from 1.8% of gross that we give to the merchant services through PNC. We're talking about going from that to 0.07% if our average purchase is about $100. And if our average purchase is like 60, 120, the changes there are minimal. So we're talking about a 0.07% of gross revenue. 1.8% of gross revenue, that's like giving away 2% of your company. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that a lot of these competitors, merchant services, payment processors, the ones that give you the best prices, they also just kind of mitigate some of their losses by having a membership fee as well. And I think the membership fee for here is like $50, $70 or something like that. So none of this is costly. To be completely honest with you, I was thrown off with the per line deal. And maybe not all of them are per line. I certainly haven't seen it advertised that way, at least not outright. But even when you talk about a per line, that's still, we're still talking about low costs, because we're not really looking at our current TDS contract or the restructure, which basically saves us $5, gets a little better service, but saves us $5. We're looking at when fiber optic comes down the line. When fiber optic comes down the line, we're going to talk about doubling our costs, and we might not necessarily see any added benefits or even any added reliability. Plus, to get it any earlier than it would be provided to us, we might have to pay construction fees to get the fiber optic routed to us. And by that time, 5G on the cell towers could come down the line. And that's supposed to revolutionize everything, the way people use data. It's supposed to be, like a revolution like fiber optic was. So it works on our benefit to entertain these low cost options that could potentially be more reliable and introduce to us benefits we've never had before. So the cost is minimal, because when you're thinking about cost, don't think about your current contract. Think about it doubling when you go over to fiber optic. You know what I mean? There's either the safe plan, which is to restructure with TDS. We stay safe. We just, business as usual. I mean, we could still change there wouldn't be much that changed. We could look at some things. Payment facilitation, that could still change. Going from the 1.8% of gross to a lower number, and getting better hardware. Security, if we wanted to make a change, we wouldn't need to if we were staying with TDS. But Mel hates it, so we got to look at something. And cost might go down $5 if we restructure with TDS, but Mel's still going to hate it, and it's still going to be dropping all the time. You know what I mean? We're probably going to be able to expect the same service. Now, if we decide to go with that option, I'm going to be very adamant about talking to the tech and making sure he's checking out every, maybe there's a glitch in the system somewhere that they've missed. They've obviously missed this, we've been paying for 6 megs and we've been getting 4. But we're trying to cut the cord. And when we look at cutting the cord, we compare it to either staying with TDS, which is still going to come out to be more expensive, I really think. Once we total everything between these creative solutions and staying with TDS, I still think TDS is going to be more expensive. And going to fiber optic with TDS is going to almost triple costs. So, yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this one up here. My goal was to break things down into a simple process to show you that we're going to get a computer. It's going to be our guinea pig computer. It's, it doesn't make or break any of this project, so we get it in the building and we move on. It's not a big deal it's nothing to sweat. The hotspot, it's cost effective and there's money back guarantees. So we get it in the building, we test it out, we see what the speed's like, and we decide what to do from there. At the same time, we're going to get a VoIP phone in the building, and we have so many choices. We're going to get a VoIP phone in the building. We're going to get it attached to the hotspot. We're going to see, is it what we thought? What can we do with it? How can we play with it? How's it going to work? How's it going to work when we get 3, 4, 5, 6 more phones? And that's our starting point. Very simple. Computer, getting the hotspot in the door and testing it, and the VoIP phone with it to test it on the hotspot. Piece of cake. Then after that, step 4, security. Just one phone call over to the rep to see what device we need to look at. We're going to look at it and get it in the door. And then when all of that's taken care of, we can talk about payment processing. We could start to look at, I only got a sneak peek of Fat Merchant's devices. I got a full rundown from PNC and their payment processing hardware provider, which is Clover. That was the one I was talking about that allows you to set up the customer rewards programs and things like that. And down the line, I haven't mentioned this, but I actually have a project down the line, might start next year, is actually an analytical project. It's analysis. So I want to make sure that we have analytics with our new software, analytics with all of our online marketing. They're called dashboards, like Google Analytics. Analytics for payments, analytics for our new computers, internet speeds, analytics on our phones, making sure that at a glance you can see anything you want to know about your business. That is an infrastructure that I'm going to set up for you probably at the first quarter next year. There's going to be a lot to that, setting things up. And one thing is getting new payment, like the devices provided by Clover. You can see anything at a glance. You don't have to go back to the accounting paperwork. You don't have to run the numbers. You don't have to do any of that. You can just punch a couple buttons and you can see anything that you need to know. So that's another fun thing. But ultimately, we're also talking about cutting costs, going from 2%, giving away 2% gross to a much lower number, potentially. But that will be the last thing that we get to. So hopefully, I know that this is a convoluted, complicated project. Hopefully you feel good about it now that I've broken things down into a simple step-by-step process, what we're going to do, how we're going to tackle this, how we're going to bite it off. And it's not going to be a very difficult thing whatsoever. So I'm going to wrap this up and then I'll get it over to you. It may or may not have the bells and whistles on it, the animations and the background music and things like that. But I'll send it over. All right, I'll talk to you.